Good evening and welcome to Virginia's Views and Vibes. I'm your host, Ginny Gardner, and today is Holocaust Remembrance Day. So this evening we are talking about anti-Semitism. And before we begin, as always, the views expressed on this show do not reflect the views of New TV. Tonight we will discuss anti-Semitism with my two guests, Dr. Dominic Amara and Bruce Apotheker. Welcome and thank you so much for joining me on this very important day.
Yes.
Bruce, let's start with you. You received the Human Rights Award in Newton, and you're Jewish.
Yep.
Let me ask you, do you see a big difference now than when we both grew up in Newton? Are you seeing, is it more visible?
Oh yeah, I think it's not only visible more in Newton, but across the country and across the world. Yeah. You know, before when I was growing up, I was originally from Roxbury and Dorchester. We moved to Newton, and you know, you would hear an anti-Semitic joke, and you know, then you know your friends would say they're kidding around. They call you whatever name, yeah. But you always had the feeling that there was no hatred towards you.
Right.
Now, hatred is prevalent. Not only in Newton, like I said, but you can see it on the college campuses. You see it across America. You see it across the world. And if you go back to history of the 1930s and you saw the start of the Holocaust and how it all began on the college campuses, and this is what we're seeing now, the hate and just, you know, they don't want Jewish students being there on college campuses, and they're threatening to kill the Jews, and they're threatening, you know, that they're river to the sea, which is basically, you know, the annihilation of Israel. And so it's very, very concerning for, I say not only me, but for other people, because they also, there's a hatred towards America. Yeah. That's what I'm seeing too, and that's really concerning.
Dr. Amara, I'm going to ask you kind of the same question, and as far as discrimination and terrible jokes, I'd like you to kind of speak about that.
I think I've seen it, and I've seen it in not just in the context of Jewish attacks, but I've seen the context of even in other communities, because I grew up in a different kind of a community. I grew up originally in the West End, but you'd always hear it. But in many cases, the context was a lot different. We were a family of sorts, and we would fight against each other. We would kid each other in some of the worst ways. We'd even steal from each other or stab each other's tires, etc. When I grew up in the West End, I was one of those kids that was, you know, street born. And but it was never a real kind of visceral hate, and it just never happened there. I got to see a little bit of it when I went to see when I was at BU, and I saw a bit of it there. But for the most part, you know, if you're a student, you tend to be minded just study, do your books, you know, go home, go to work, come back, and you leave it alone. But as I'm out into the world a little bit more, and I see it more. But I don't just see it in the context of Jewish hate. I see it all over the world. I'm very well traveled. I've traveled the world quite a bit. And I see it in every context. I see people hating. You know, I don't like I see the Nepalese hate the Indians hate the Nepalese. You know, it's like I think it's endemic now to the society that we have throughout the world. I just see something different is happening.
Yeah. Do you think it's orchestrated to some degree? And I mean, what I mean by that is sort of we've now brainwashed maybe all of us that women should not like men or sort of be in competition with men too much. The haves and the have-nots. I just kind of feel we fell into that pattern, and now this almost came very natural to hate. There's a hate, as you said, there's a hatred to it.
I might disagree. I'd say that a lot of this is taught. some version of it is taught. It's either taught at the home. It was taught at. It's taught at various stages at different institutions. It's validated somewhere along the line. And I think that validation, whether or not the validation is at a university, or whether it's at a high school, or whether it's at your at a community, if that's validated, then people have a reason to say, gee, that's great. I think I'll go one step further, and I'll go one step further. And there are plenty of examples of that, the personal examples. And I think you could see what happened in the topic that I kind of like been reading about is what happened in Italy. It seemed to me the anti-Semitism seemed to be almost non-existent.
Right.
I say almost because
Right.
it was existent, almost non-existent, at least from what you hear. There are some people that dispute that, but some people say that it was always there. It was just, for the most part, just quiet. People got along, etc. Then for some reason, there's always a reason for all human behavior. There's a reason. And with that reason, there became let's inflame things. But there's always someone that validates, that teaches that hate and then validates it. I'm going to give you an example. It's got nothing to do with whatever. I was a principal at a school many years ago, 1,000 years ago, and I had brought a kid in because he was going to be suspended for using a racial slur, and I brought the parents in, and I said the kid's going to be suspended, etc. And I did it as professionally as one can in a situation like that. And the father was there, and the mother was there. The father was there, and the father was saying, father listened, and after a while he started to rail at the kid, just railed at him. And I thought he was going to be, I was so angry, I thought he was, but he didn't. He just continually yelled. Well, the kid eventually lost it, and guess what he said? He said, "What are you effing at me for? You say it all the time."
Wow. Wow.
So in other words, this kid wasn't learning it from any place else. He was learning it at home. It was being validated. So he felt it was perfectly okay to do that. Now he's being criticized for it. He's being frustrated with it. And we know the cycle. You're an officer, so you know that the frustration breeds aggression, the old maxim of frustration breeds aggression. And you frustrate someone like that, and he started to lash out.
Yeah.
And and I think a lot of that is happening now. That this has been taught in a variety of ways. They've given the kids a reason for it, particularly kids now. And these kids are frustrated because they've been taught all of this. They're now frustrated, so what are they going to do? They're going to be angry at it, and they're starting to go out and they're starting to do the damage they've been taught to do, which is kind of interesting because the people that are telling them to go ahead and do it, the kids are having a field day, they're doing what they're supposed to do, but they're going to be nailed to the cross. They're going to have records. They're going to have, this is going to be difficult for them to have a job later on if they want any kind of a reasonable occupation. They're going to be labeled. But the professor has tenure. He's not going to be touched, and he's going to be paid. So somewhere along the line, these people that are being, but that's a roundabout way of saying that I think there's a lot of this hate has to be taught.
Yeah.
That has to be taught, and it has to be validated. And then someone goes ahead and goes, I think I'll do it, not realizing that there are later on they're going to say, well, boy, was I stupid. Why did I do something like that? But right now they're just being led by the nose, like a bull with a ring in his leg. Just lead him by the nose.
Well, I was going to say what's amazing too is that rightfully so you can't use the N-word. We saw a few years ago there was Asian hate,
Right.
and rightfully so, the communities came together. But what happens, and as being a Jew growing up, it was always You can't hate these people, you can't hate those people, you can't hate them, but it's always okay to hate the Jews. And, we've seen that over the years. And, you make a good point about being taught. But what's amazing about this, though, is we're seeing that on October 7th, the atrocities that were committed, and to have people protesting in favor of Hamas, saying on these college campuses that I am Hamas, they shout, and from the river to the sea, which means there is no two-state solution. It's the annihilation of Israel. And so you got to say to yourself, what's going on in those kids' minds and their actions. If you're going to hate somebody, that's, like you said, it could be taught at the home, it could be taught at the schools. But to back up murderers, rapists, committing the most atrocious crimes that are imaginable, and supporting that, where have we gone as a society? We see the American flags being taken down on the college campuses, and they're putting up the Palestinian flags. They're putting up, things representing the Hamas. We see red hands going up. So you say to yourself, where is all this coming from? And it's well orchestrated. It's well organized. You look at the tents. No matter where you go in this country, it's the same tents.
Same tents.
Whether it's George Soros back, the Rockefeller brothers, the Tides Foundation, a lot of money is coming from Democratic donors, the same people who support Biden. They're funding many of these groups, and the money's going into them. And these are things, this isn't a political thing to say, this is just the facts. People can look it up and they can see where that money's coming from. But it's just amazing that the support for the people who committed those crimes, I've never imagined in my life, if somebody's going to hate me because of who I am, that's one thing. But to support the people who committed those crimes, where have we gone as a country? We've lost moral clarity.
Absolutely. You and I both grew up in Newton, and I always say I was a little bit insulated here, a lot sheltered. It was like growing up in Mayberry. I was from Auburndale.
Yeah.
Never, ever in my life did I think that we would be talking about this would be happening. And when it wasn't here, other countries, it was in other countries, that could never happen here. Yet, you watch the colleges and the university, and that's exactly what's happening. And even here in Newton, like I say, it was like Mayberry growing up here.
Yep.
But Ginny, I'd say this, that, not again, to slightly disagree, is that I think we always knew this stuff was there. There's a certain maybe rejection and apathy.
Yeah.
We don't see the depth of it. Maybe we don't want to see the depth of it. We kind of like just say, okay, it's not bothering me now. It might be there. I might see a smolder, but it's no big deal. I see what happens on college campuses now and whatever, and it's not been throughout history, but I see what happened in fascist Italy, that if you want to change something, one of the ways to do it is at the universities. And this is how, if you go way back to justification of the attacks on Jews, what did you do? One of the things that they did, well, they looked at packing the universities. They put individuals into the universities that supported the individual ideas that they wanted placed. And then they used those to attack the Jews. I'll give you a perfect example of that. They had just the whole idea of genetics and eugenics and whatever.
Right.
That whole idea of master race, etc., was an idea that was based in science. You hear about trust the science. It's all about the science. Listen to the science. Well, this was nothing new. This was something that the fascists and the Nazis did. What they did was they took They took these ideas, which were Western ideas, they created all these university departments, which is what they're doing here. They create all these university departments, they paid for it, make sure that goes in, because that's what's happening now. All these university departments are funded by outside resources. Something that'll support that ideal. And then they use it and twist it so that they can sell that to the public. And the public will say, pretty much, they're going about their business and they're going to buy that. So when you say that a scientist says that they can take the whole idea of evolution and look at evolution and then turn that around and say there is an evolution, see, in terms of species. That has been led into social evolution. And they said, okay, geez, there's a social evolution, so we can maybe show that there is a certain set of racial growth, that certain races have grown and others have not. So you end up with an Aryan race. You get those that are sub-Aryan, like the Italians and the French, which was actually one of the things that Hitler proposed. And then you have the Slavs and the rest of the people, and then there's the Jews who are really not even human. So, but this was taking Darwinism and turning it upside down. And this was taking the science and using the science. And this is throughout history they've been doing this. And now that they've got the colleges doing it, in colleges they're doing this, and it's no different today. Look at some of the universities are being funded, and when they bring in a funding, they with the funding comes a lot of strings. Who the professors are going to be, what the curriculum is going to be. That's not without some forethought. They know what they're doing.
Right.
When you see Qatar, I think the last few years they've given $4 billion to the universities, and they're also housing the Hamas leaders.
Yeah. So it's a.
Right.
This is the long road. This is the very long road. They have planned this for a long
Absolutely.
time.
Absolutely.
And we've let the money come in, and with the money comes the strings.
Right.
And with the strings, they're singing. That string, it's more than just puppet strings. They're singing. They're creating the song that these kids are singing.
Right.
And again, it's the professors have been given this mantle of being almost gods. Your professor says it, as I did when I was in school. Your professor said something, it had to be true. It's like a parent. This is a surrogate parent.
You did challenge your professors.
Yes,
so
I did.
You can say most people, but you did not. You challenged
I did.
your professors.
I did.
But when, let's say, my kids challenged their professors, they did it once, and then they received a bad mark, and they knew they couldn't.
That's what happens today, though.
Yes, that's what happens today. But you challenged your professors.
I had a professor at Boston College who was very on the socialist end, and we would have great debates during class. But for the times of the exams, I wrote everything he wanted to hear.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the educational system. We have to look at the educational system from top to bottom and say, what are they teaching?
Right.
Where's the money coming from? Yeah. And what are the results of the teaching, or what's the product? If we're paying for it, I'm paying for it, you're paying for it. I want to know what the results of my money.
Right.
What are the results of the dollars I'm giving? And all of these universities who have very large endowments, they're getting money from the plumber, the baker, the candlestick maker, if we have any more candlestick makers, but they're getting all of the money from them to support the kinds of programs that have nothing to do with us and are really against us. It's a matter of this process is not something, again, without some forethought. It's a matter of, it isn't just attacking the Jews.
Right.
It's attacking, because as I said in my little speech, it says that anti-Semitism is anti-Italianism turned inside out. It's anti-Puerto Rican and turned inside out. It's anti-Chinese, if you heard that. It's anti-Japanese.
It's an attack on the Western values.
That's
what they write.
Yeah.
And if you look at, it starts in the public schools also. is an indoctrination to children,
Yeah.
what they're learning. They go off to college. There is a university professor, UCal Berkeley. His name eludes me now, but he was one of the founders of Students for the Justice of Palestine. And you look at, these hate organizations. Nowhere else could you have these organizations on campus.
Right.
Rightfully so. You
Right.
couldn't have the Ku Klux Klan coming in, rightfully so, and you couldn't have them protesting, you couldn't have them saying things. And it always seems that they kowtow to what these kids are saying, what the professors are saying, and it is, you follow the money trail,
Yeah.
and you look at who's funding them. It's very concerning, especially that, it doesn't seem to ever be a compromise. People, they'll come into our country, a lot of these foreign students, if you look at some, I think it was Columbia, NYU, approaching and even surpassing 50% of people that are coming in. Now, there's nothing wrong with someone coming in from a different land and being a foreign student. I'm all in favor of that for the diversity. But it doesn't seem like people want to come in here and assimilate. We're always,
Right.
at one time, we all know the great melting pot stories and things like that. But it seems like nowadays people will come into our country and we encourage them to keep their enclaves of who they are as opposed to welcoming the assimilation into our country. It just doesn't seem to happen anymore.
I think there's, and you both said it, a culture of fear now. And it's trickled down to, let's say, my kids raising their own children, my grandchildren. We maybe used to speak up. I mean, we certainly saw it when things happened in school.
Yep.
Whether it's trying to teach, the teacher that went to Disney with his new boyfriend's now spouse, and he wanted to announce it to the class. I think that happened at one of the birth schools.
I think so,
Remember
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
And parents said no, it's unnecessary. Now I think parents are afraid to speak out because they know what will happen. Their kids will be ostracized. They'll be ostracized. And I think to some degree, while we were sleeping, I hate to be a conspiracy theorist, but I am. While we were sleeping, while we kind of trusted the teachers, trusted the priest, trusted the rabbis, they kind of sucked this in. It was funny to tell Italian jokes. It was funny to, make fun of black people too. That was funny, and we kind of let it go, and then all of a sudden, and I swear they started this 40 or 50 years ago, they started picking out who was the person of the times. We were going to hate men, we were going to hate rich people, we were going to hate people that came in with illegally, and it's sort of, they make us hate each other, and we've come to take this hate as sort of for granted, and it baffles me. It's the priests, we go to church, and the priests say nothing. They say nothing, and what happened on October 7th, was so horrible, and they're silent. What are they afraid
Well,
of?
I think that's the question to ask, is that, number one, is that people are, they ask the question, who are they?
Right.
And it could be a whole bunch of, there's a whole litany of people that it could be. But between the they and the you, what's in the middle? And there used to be something that protected you in the middle, whether or not it was a set of rules, a constitution, law, whatever it was. There used to be family. That used to be there used to be some protective. There used to be a press, which was protective.
Oh, right.
All of these things were protective and kind of like a filter of information that would come back and forth. Family is all but dissolved. After the Second World War, that the family disappeared. The father and mother, they all went to work, etc. And you gave the care to other caretakers, caretakers, the kids, and then you send the kids to school, and you trusted the kids at school, and the teachers said, we'll give us more money and we will take care of your kid, and we did. And then the press, for whatever reason, became in I guess, totally indoctrinated. It was infiltrated and then indoctrinated. I think most of the people in the press have a particular singular mind. And I think you got to say, again, who is the they, and what's their motive, and saying how are they able to do it. And I think if you solve those two big problems, then you can start to address it. But until you start to say who are they, and look at the method in which they're using, and the universities are a method. You know, even the churches, by not saying something, is a method. The schools are a method.
Social
TikTok
media.
is right. I was going to say that social media is a method.
Well, you know, here we are. It's May 6th, and as you said, it's a Holocaust Memorial Day. But here it is, May 6th. The attacks occurred on October 7th, and to this day, the UN has never condemned Hamas and the actions that were done. And just only recently, they admitted, the UN, they acknowledged the atrocities that occurred against the women. There are so many major women organizations that have never come out and condemned what we saw. We saw a period of time where the Me Too movement, rightfully so, women must be believed, rightfully so. But for some reason, because it's Israel and the Jews, they stay silent. I don't understand who they're trying not to offend. You have to have, again, that moral clarity. You have to come out, and you got to draw a line in the sand. Do I go with laws, morals, ethics, values? Do I go with that side? Or do I go with this side where I know that these things happen, but I want to stay silent because I don't want to upset anybody on this side?
Right.
And this is what we're seeing, and this is the biggest problem that I'm seeing, that people aren't speaking up. The silence.
And I'm seeing 3 minutes left, and I want to, and I know you've seen this.
You've got 3 minutes. That's it?
We have 3 minutes left for this show. We're going to do part 2, so stay tuned. But
because I had something I was going to read to him that was specific to that, but I'll show it to him afterwards.
You know what?
It's okay.
We're going to talk about it just a little bit in the 3 minutes, and that is, and I know you're aware of it, the Italian-American Alliance has come out twice in support of Israel,
which was
in
very appreciative of.
Condemning what happened. And we always wonder, where are the rest of the organizations? Why didn't they speak out? And Dr. Amara and the IA, the people on this, Jimmy DiStefano, Tom DeMangelo, and myself, Dean Saluti as well, came out with this letter, and we condemned what happened on October 7th. Then Dr. Amara went one step further, and his letter has gone to the press, and it's a 3-page speech that he read at one of the Italian events. Dawn, why don't you talk about 2 minutes about this, because it's so powerful what is said in this.
Well, I did it mainly so that, because I being an Italian, and there were two things. One, you'd heard that that the Holocaust really never happened in Italy, and it did. It didn't happen to the extent otherwise, but it did. And we had to understand, it had to be, number one, it had to be said, because if we don't say it, we're one of those people just by not opening our mouths, we let something, we kind of accede to it. You say it's okay, it's not that bad, it's not whatever. And the Italian Holocaust was different. It was different than the Jewish Holocaust.
And I'm going to interrupt you really quick because it says wrap up. But basically, this letter, what this speech says is, Italian people did not tolerate what was happening to the Jews, and many Italians helped Jews escape, and they're proud of it. We didn't have a love affair with World War II, as some people say. We helped people, and many Italian people lost their lives. And we're going to go part 2, and stay tuned. And thank you, Bruce, and thank you, Dawn.